Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me tell you, this is, I've traveled the whole country now, or a lot of parts of this country, campaigning for president. But this tonight, this weather, this is why people live in Florida right here, huh? So here we are. It always comes down to Florida, doesn't it? And it will again this year, not once but twice. Not once but twice we'll have to decide the presidency here, but it starts a week from tonight. Actually, it's already started because people are already voting. And in this election, it is not just a choice between candidates. We are deciding the definition of what it means to be a conservative in the 21st century. And we are deciding our identity as a nation and as a people. Now, let's remember why America is so special. It wasn't because of a single person. It was because this nation was founded at its very beginning on a very powerful truth, that our rights do not come from the government. Our rights do not come from our leaders. Our rights do not come from our law. Our rights come from our Creator. Our rights come from God. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, chief among them life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. And it is upon that powerful principle that this nation was founded and it prospered. And for over 2 centuries, each generation did what they needed to do to ensure that this nation was even better for their kids than it was for them. Now we reach that crossroads again, because after 8 years of Barack Obama and 2 decades of failure in Washington, everything that makes us special in America is in danger. It is the reason why in the year 2009 and 2010, I was just a private citizen after serving in the Florida legislature for 8 years. And I chose to run for the United States Senate against incredible odds. My opponent was the sitting governor of Florida. His name was Charlie Crist. And he was beating me by 60 or 70 points in the polls. And the entire Republican establishment in Washington, D.C. supported him. I had no idea how I would raise the money to succeed. And everything I knew about politics told me I would lose. But I understood then, Barack Obama had just been in office for a few months. And I understood that if we didn't have a senator that would go up there and stand up to the Obama agenda and offer a clear alternative, things would only get worse. And so I chose to run against those odds, and Florida believed in me. And before even it went to the primary, Charlie Crist had done what he should have done a long time ago. He left the Republican Party, and we defeated him. And in my time there, I have indeed stood up to the Obama agenda and offered a clear alternative. I am proud that in our time there, despite the fact that Harry Reid has basically shut down the United States Senate 4 out of the last 5 years, we got things done like we said we would. I, along with Jeff Miller, another congressman from Florida, we passed the VA Accountability Act, which means today, senior executives at the VA who aren't doing a good job, they can be fired for the first time ever. Earlier this year, I passed a law, bipartisan by the way, that imposed sanctions on Hezbollah, a terrible terrorist group that targets Israel and hates America. And everyone running for president says they're against Obamacare. I am the only one running for president that's ever done anything about it. You see, I led the effort, and we got rid of the Obamacare bailout fund that was going to use your taxpayer money to bail out private insurance companies, and we wiped that out. I have stood up to the Obama agenda, and I have offered a clear alternative. But I have learned over the last 5 years that while a member of Congress can help shape the agenda, only a president can set the agenda. And our next president must be someone that is willing to undo all of the damage Barack Obama has done and craft a new course for America's future. And that's what I will do if you give me the chance to be the next president of the United States. I run for president on a very simple platform, and that is this. We are going to return to the principles that made America's greatness possible. When I'm president of the United States, for the first time in 8 years, you're going to have a president that actually follows the Constitution of the United States of America. The next president of the United States will appoint at least 2 to 3 Supreme Court justices. You know one already because of the passing of Justice Scalia. The balance of the court and the Constitution is at stake. When I'm president of the United States, we are going to appoint judges to the Supreme Court that understand the Constitution is supposed to be applied according to its original meaning, not whatever you want it to mean, which is what these liberal judges are doing now. When I'm president of the United States, for the first time in 8 years, you will have a president that defends your First Amendment right to live out the teachings of your faith in every aspect of your life. For the first time in 8 years, you will have a president that protects your Second Amendment right to defend yourself and your family. I served for 8.5 years in the Florida legislature. I was the Speaker of the House for 2 years. I'm proud of my service there as well. We cut property taxes. We balanced our budgets. We brought vocational training back to our high schools without the federal government, without Common Core. We fixed problems in my time there, and from it I learned that the best solutions come at the state level, not the federal level. And that's why when I'm president, we will follow the 10th Amendment, and we are returning power to the states once again. We will follow the Constitution of the United States when I'm president, and I will prove it on my first day in office. When I take the oath of office and swear to protect and defend and uphold the Constitution, unlike Barack Obama, I will mean it. And after I take the oath of office, I am going straight to the Oval Office, and I am going to repeal every single one of Barack Obama's unconstitutional executive orders. America is exceptional because of free enterprise. It works. Look at all these businesses here. Look at the small businesses you own and run and work for. Why do they exist? Not because of government. Today, they exist despite government. For government is crushing entrepreneurship, getting in our way. Socialism doesn't work. It never has worked. Big government stands in the way of the little guy, the people trying to start a business and grow. When I'm president of the United States, you will have a president that knows free enterprise works. Not because I inherited millions of dollars, I did not. There's nothing wrong with it, but I did not. My mother was a maid. My father was a bartender. And they had jobs because free enterprise works. Because someone created a job, and with that job, they were able to raise our family. Free enterprise works because it's the only economic system in the world where you can make poor people richer, and you don't have to make rich people poorer. You can lift everybody up, and you don't have to tear anyone down. And I have a plan. I don't just give speeches about free enterprise. I have a plan to reinvigorate it. I ask you, go on our website, marcorubio.com, and you'll see. We have a real plan to fix the tax code. We have a real plan to roll back regulations. We have a real plan to save Social Security and Medicare. We have a real plan to balance our budget. We have a real plan to fully utilize all of our energy resources. And we have a real plan to repeal and replace Obamacare once and for all. When I'm president of the United States, you will have a real commander-in-chief for the first time in 8 years. Our current commander-in-chief is a weak one. The front runner in this race doesn't even know what the nuclear triad is. He thinks it's a rock band. Our next commander-in-chief better be ready to lead from day number one. I say this to you with full confidence. I may not have lived as long as some of the people running, but no one running has more experience on foreign policy or national security than I do. I serve a state that has an incredible presence of both veterans and the military. Here in Florida, especially here in Northeast Florida, we understand what a critical part of our country our military is. And today, in a world that is growing increasingly dangerous, Barack Obama, with the help of some Republicans, by the way, are gutting the U.S. military. The world is crazy today. You have a sociopath, a lunatic in North Korea with nuclear weapons. The Chinese government is trying to take over the South China Sea. You have Vladimir Putin sowing instability in Europe and in the Middle East. Iran is about to receive $100 billion of sanctions relief because of Barack Obama's deal with the Ayatollah. And radical Islamic jihadists are spreading all over the world. ISIS has affiliates in over a dozen countries now. And in the face of all of this danger, he's gutting our military. Because of these defense cuts that I voted against and have fought against, because of these defense cuts, we will soon have the smallest army since the end of World War II. We will soon have the smallest Navy we have had in 100 years. And we are on the verge of having the smallest Air Force in our entire history. The average age of an airplane in the Air Force is now 27 years old. It means the pilots are younger than the planes. This cannot continue. And here's what's so sad about it. It's unfair to our men and women in uniform. We're still asking them to go into harm's way, but we're asking them to go into harm's way with less equipment, less training, and less people alongside them. We're still asking them to go into harm's way while their paycheck and their benefits are being cut. We have veterans we have servicemen and women facing foreclosure, facing real economic hardship, and they're halfway around the world getting shot at. And it makes no sense. These defense cuts, this defense spending is not the source, is not the reason for our national debt. And that's why when I'm President of the United States, we will undertake a Reagan-style rebuilding of the United States military. We are going to have a real war on terror. The one we have now is fake. Barack Obama is releasing terrorists from Guantanamo now on a weekly basis. 30 to 33% of them rejoin the battlefield against us. This has to stop. We don't want war. We want peace. We want peace. But to achieve peace, you must sometimes defeat the enemies of peace. Radical Islamic jihadists like ISIS are enemies of peace. And when I am president, the best intelligence agencies in the world will find them. And the finest military in the world will destroy them. And if we capture these terrorists alive, they are not going to have the right to remain silent. And they're not coming to a courtroom in the United States. And they're not coming to a jail in America. They will go to Guantanamo. We are going to stand with our allies when I'm president. This president has betrayed our allies like Israel. He treats the Ayatollah of Iran with more respect than what he gives the Prime Minister of Israel. It is an outrage. The front runner in this race, Donald Trump, was asked if he would take sides between Israel and the Palestinians, and he said he would not. I want you to know something. When I'm president, we are taking sides. We are going to be on Israel's side. And I will prove it. I will prove it as I have already in my time in the Senate. I will prove it on my first day in office. Because after I'm done repealing Obama's unconstitutional executive orders, the next thing I am going to do is I am going to cancel Barack Obama's deal with the Ayatollah of Iran. When I'm president, we are going to take care of our veterans again. You know that in Florida, 1 out of the 4 calls that come into our offices are veterans. Veterans struggling with the VA. Veterans that are being treated as if the VA is doing them a favor instead of the other way around. My brother's a veteran. He lives in Jacksonville, Florida. He was in the Army. He was a 7th Special Forces Green Beret. One day he jumped out of an airplane, knocked out his front teeth. Every few years he has to go have a dental claim filled, and it is always a hassle. Always a hassle. They ask him to prove that it happened in the Army. And he says, well, it's the only time I jumped out of a plane. There's no accountability at the VA. Even though I passed that law that gives the president the power to fire people that aren't doing a good job, there's no accountability. 2 weeks ago, USA Today had a headline. It said that calls to the VA suicide hotline were going to voicemail. No one was fired for that. 3 days ago, it was reported that a veteran committed suicide, and the day after he died, they called him back. He had left a message on the voicemail, and still no one has been fired. This is an outrage. There are good people at the VA, and we thank them for what they do, but there are people at the VA that are not doing their job, and I am telling you, when I'm President of the United States, if you are not serving our veterans, you will lose your job at the VA. You will be fired. And by the way, I want to ask all of our veterans to raise their hands so we can thank you for your service. God bless you. God bless our veterans. I want our veterans to know this. When I'm President of the United States, if you're happy at the VA, you keep going to the VA. But when I'm President, our veterans will be able to take their VA benefits to any hospital or any doctor that they want to go see. And by the way, many of our veterans do not stop serving us when they come home. You go to any fire department in America, you go to any police station in America, you go to any sheriff's department in America, and you will find a disproportionate number of veterans. I was reminded of this a week ago. A week ago Sunday, I was in Virginia, and the news was about 3 police officers that have been shot. This is happening far too often in America. One of those 3 police officers died. She was a Marine reservist, a veteran, on her first day on the job. And so I think it's always appropriate to take a moment to thank our firefighters, our police officers, our sheriff's deputies for everything that they do for us. When I'm President of the United States, you will have a president that will never be ashamed to defend the traditional values that shaped our nation. You see, you can't have a strong country without strong people. You can't have strong people without strong values. And you cannot have strong values without strong families. The job of having strong families belongs to us. The most important job I will ever have is to be a husband to my wife and a father to my children. But we should never have government policies that hurt families. We have a tax code that punishes marriage. That will end when I'm president. We have safety net programs that, by the way, have become a way of life. The safety net and welfare, that was not supposed to be a way of life. That is to help people with a hand up, not a hand out. We will change that. But we have safety net programs that discourage marriage. And we have a president and a Justice Department that is not defending our faith community from discrimination. That will change. We cannot have a strong people without strong values. You will not have strong values without a strong community to support the family. We will support the family. We will support our faith communities. And you will have a president that will never be ashamed of our traditional values. And you will have a president that will never be afraid to say that all human life is worthy of the protection of our laws. As you can see, we have a lot of work to do because Barack Obama's done a lot of damage to America. We can't change this country. We can't embrace a better future if Hillary Clinton is elected president of the United States. To begin with, she would follow all of the Obama agenda, all of it. If we lose this election to Hillary Clinton, Obamacare is permanent. All those unconstitutional executive orders are permanent. The next Supreme Court justice will be a liberal. If we lose this election, the consequences are generational. We can't lose. We cannot afford to nominate someone in this party that is not a conservative, and we cannot afford to nominate someone that is not a conservative that can win. I know that I can win. The Democrats know that I will win. Hillary Clinton attacks me more than any other Republican because she doesn't want to run against me, but I cannot wait to run against Hillary Clinton. Because Hillary Clinton is unqualified to be president of the United States. She put classified information on her private server, and for that, she's now under FBI investigation. And Hillary Clinton is disqualified from being commander-in-chief because she lied to the families of the victims of Benghazi. Anyone who lies to the families of Americans who have lost their lives in the service of our country can never be the commander-in-chief of the United States of America. This country desperately needs to return to the principles of our conservative movement. And so we must stop and remind ourselves of what conservatism truly is. At the passing of Nancy Reagan 2 days ago, it was a moment to pause and remember what happened 36 years ago in America with the election of Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan defined conservatism for an entire generation. It is not a coincidence that there are so many people my age who are conservatives and leading this country. Look at how many up-and-coming conservative leaders there are in America. Who is the up-and-coming young liberal leader? Bernie Sanders. Because Ronald Reagan defined conservatism. Conservatism was about adhering to the Constitution, which limited the power of the federal government, not because we don't care, but because we do care. Because we understand that more often than not, when the federal government gets involved in things it's not supposed to be involved in, it makes it worse, not better. Conservatism is about free enterprise, a free economy where people are rewarded on their merit, on their work, on their skill, not on their connections, not on their family name, not on their access to power or their ability to influence government. Conservatism is about a strong national defense because history has taught us that weakness is the enemy of peace. Weakness invites war and miscalculation. Strength is the best way to achieve peace. Conservatism is about traditional values that have served mankind for thousands of years. That's what conservatism is about. It has never been about anger. Conservatism has never been about fear. You have a right to be angry. Government has failed you. Your parties have failed you. Your leaders have failed you. The media has failed you. Our universities and colleges have failed us, except for the University of Florida. I had to drop that in. It's friendly territory, I hope. Go Gators, that's right. Hey, I need everyone's vote right now, okay? Let's not get into that. I can't lose any votes, but you know how I feel. All of our institutions have failed us, and people are frustrated. You can use that anger to motivate you to take action, but don't let anger define us. We have never been an angry people. We have always been an optimistic people, realistic about our challenges, but optimistic about our future. Do not let the circumstances we face divide us against each other. For we are all still Americans, even if we disagree about certain things. We share a common destiny. We can't have a great nation if we leave anyone behind. But we must return to these principles of conservatism, and we must apply them to the challenges of our time. Conservatism is about the principles I outlined, and it's also about real ideas. It's not enough to stand up here and say, we're going to make America great again. You deserve to know how. You deserve to know how you're going to do that. Because if you don't know the how, then how do you hold anyone accountable? How do you really know what you're getting? How do you really know where we're going to wind up? We have to nominate an elected conservative, but a conservative that can unite this party. I just told you a moment ago how important it is we defeat Hillary Clinton. We are not going to defeat her. If we nominate someone that over 60% of our party rejects and a third of our party refuses to ever vote for. If we are not together, we cannot win. I can unite this party, but it's not just about uniting this party. We have to grow it. That means we have to take our conservatism to people that aren't voting for us now and convince them that conservatism is right for them. I know that I can do that because I've done it my whole life. I will take conservatism to people that live and struggle to live paycheck to paycheck. I can do that because I grew up paycheck to paycheck, because I have lived paycheck to paycheck. I will take conservatism to young Americans who are struggling under the student loan debt we face today, because I had over $100,000 in student loans not so long ago. I remember what it was like to pay Sally Mae $1,000 a month. I've never met her. She took a lot of my money. We need to take the conservative message to young families raising their children. And I can do that because my wife, Jeanette, and I are raising our 4 children in the 21st century. And we know how hard it's become to instill in them the values they teach in our church instead of the values they try to ram down our throat in the popular culture. We will take our values to people that do not vote for us, and we will win. And I know we will win because last Saturday night, I traveled to the island of Puerto Rico, a place that does not vote for Republicans often. And I did not go there as a moderate, nor did I go there as a liberal. I went there as a conservative, talking about balanced budgets and limited government and free enterprise and the Constitution. And on Sunday, over 70% of people on the island of Puerto Rico voted for me, and I won that primary. Because our nation knows we have gone too far in the right direction, and it is time to turn it around, and we will. And I want you to know I'm very passionate about this issue personally. America is not just the country I was born in. America is the country that changed the history of my family. My parents were not born in America. My parents understood America was special because they knew what life was like outside of America. My parents knew what it was like to live in a society that says it doesn't matter how hard you work, it doesn't matter how long you try, it doesn't matter how good you are. If your parents were not the right people, you would only be allowed to go so far. I just described to you the human condition for almost all of history. Almost every person that has ever lived has lived in a society that trapped them in the circumstances of their birth. In 1956, my parents came here, they had nothing. My father lost his mother when he was 9, so he never finished school. He worked from the time he was 9 years old. My mother didn't have it much easier. She was one of 7 girls raised in rural Cuba by a disabled father, and they struggled. When they came here in 1956, they had no money, they barely knew anyone, they had no education, and they barely spoke any English. The first words my father learned in English were, "I am looking for a job." And life was hard. A few years ago, I wrote a book, and I started interviewing my mom to write about their history. She told me something I had never heard before. She said, "Do you know that when we first got to America, we were very discouraged? It was so hard. We couldn't find work. We were struggling. We worked really hard. We had to share an apartment with her sister and their family. And they wondered, did we make a mistake? Maybe we shouldn't have come." They even thought about going back to Cuba at one point. You can't imagine how glad I am they didn't. But I want you to know they stuck it out. They persevered. Do you know that less than 10 years after my parents came here under those conditions, my father by then was just a bartender on Miami Beach, and they bought their first home in a safe and stable neighborhood. They never became rich and they never became famous. But my parents became incredibly successful people because working as a bartender and a maid, they raised a family. They retired with dignity. And most important of all, they lived to see all 4 of their children live a life better than their own. That story would not have been possible in any nation on earth except here. And that story is not just my story. That story is our story. Here in this country, we are all but a generation or 2 removed from a story not unlike that one. Whether they came here from another country or not, we are all a generation or 2 removed from someone who made your future the purpose of their lives. It was what your grandparents did for your parents. Or maybe it's your father that worked 2 jobs so you could have a better future. Maybe it was your mother who gave up on her dreams so you could live yours. Or maybe I'm describing you now. Maybe you're the bartender and the maid. Maybe you're the person that's working those hard jobs and have been discouraged, but you are willing to do whatever it takes so that your kids could have the life you always wanted. This is who we are. This is what makes America special. That is the American dream that changed my life and yours and the world. That American dream separates us from every other society in the history of mankind. And it isn't dead, but it's in a lot of trouble. And we must either save it now, or we will have to explain to our children why we were the generation that lost it. For all the things that made America special were not automatic. Our great country did not happen on its own. For over 2 centuries, each generation before us confronted great challenges and solved big problems. Each generation before us did what they needed to do to ensure their children inherited a better life and a better country. My friends, the time has come for our generation to do our part. The moment has arrived for us to do what the Americans before us did. The time has come for us to do for our children what our parents did for us. And when I'm president, this generation will do its part. When I'm president, we will confront our challenges. We will solve our problems. We will deal with what needs to be dealt with. And I know that times are tough. Do not let anyone take advantage of that to fool you into voting for something that isn't true. I know that times are tough, but I want you to believe, as Reagan did, that Americans can do anything. My grandfather was a huge influence on my life. He lived with us until he passed away. And I would sit for countless hours on the porch of our home as he smoked one of his 3 daily cigars. He lived to be 84, by the way. My grandfather told me this story once. You know, he was born in 1899. When he was born, there weren't even airplanes in the sky. It's kind of weird to think about that. Living in, if there's something up in the sky flying, it was a UFO, it wasn't a plane. On a summer evening in 1969, my grandfather, who was born before there were airplanes in the sky, watched on a small black and white television as an American stepped foot on the moon. And he said to himself, you know what he said to himself? And he told me years later, he shook his head and said, my goodness, Americans can do anything. They can put a man on the moon, they can do anything. Americans can do anything. We can solve these problems. We can fix what ails us. We can confront our challenges. We can leave a better future. And if you elect me president, we will. But I need your vote. If you haven't already voted, early voting is open. Go and vote now so you can spend the next 6 days finding other people to vote for me. If you listen to the media, they'll tell you he's an underdog. And you know what I say? I've been an underdog my whole life. My whole life. We are a state of underdogs. We are a nation of underdogs. And I will fight as hard as I have to ensure that Hillary Clinton is not president and that a conservative is in the White House in 2016. But I need your help. I believe with all my heart that the winner of the Florida primary next Tuesday will be the nominee of the Republican Party. And so you are given an incredible task. You are given an incredible task in a week from now. And I need your help. I need your vote. And I want you to know, as difficult as things may seem, I want you to know what history is going to say about us if we do what needs to be done. It will say that we, this generation of Americans, lived in the early years of this new century in a very difficult time. Our economy was changing. We were competing with more countries than ever. Many of the jobs we once relied on were being replaced by machines or sent to another country. A college degree was no longer enough and often too expensive. The world was more dangerous. Jihadists were spreading. It was a very difficult time. But like the Americans that came before us, we faced a choice. And we almost got it wrong. After 8 years of Barack Obama and a crazy election, we almost got it wrong. But then we remembered who we were. Then we remembered what America was. Then we remembered that Americans could do anything. And like the generations that came before us, we rose up and confronted our challenges. We rose up and solved our problems. We rose up and embraced our opportunities. We did what needed to be done. And when our work was done, we left our children as the freest and the most prosperous Americans that ever lived. Because we did what needed to be done, the American dream didn't just survive. It reached more people and changed more lives than ever before. Because we did what needed to be done, the 21st century was better than the 20th century. It was a new American century. This is the exciting future that awaits us. This is the future we can craft for ourselves and for our children. But we have to do it now. We still have time to get this right, but we do not have forever. We must do it now, and we must do it in 2016. I want to thank all of you for coming and for waiting for me. And I apologize if after the events I rush off, but I've got one more thing to do today, if my voice doesn't leave me. Been struggling with it all week. But it's worth it. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. He said he's behind me all the way. I appreciate it. But I want you to know, you believed in me once. I am asking you to believe again. We can win this election, and we will. I need your help next Tuesday, because we're not just going to win the Florida primary. We are going to win Florida in November, and we are going to turn this country around, and we are going to leave for our children what Americans always leave their children, the single greatest nation in the history of all mankind. Thank you, and God bless you. Thank you.